It's already 2026, and DeWalt quietly rolled out a wave of new tools that most people still haven't clocked yet. Some of these replace older models. Some fill gaps DeWalt users have been asking about for years, and they all are actually worth buying. In this video, we're breaking down 7 brand new DeWalt tools for 2026, what they are, what problem they're meant to solve, and who they actually make sense for. Just stick around for tool number 1, because it's the biggest shift DeWalt has made in this category in years. Let's get started. Tool 7, DeWalt Battery String Trimmer. For a lot of DeWalt users, this new battery string trimmer solves a problem that's been hiding in the lineup for years. Up until now, DeWalt's outdoor battery tools forced an all-or-nothing choice. On one end, lighter homeowner trimmers struggled once grass got thick or uneven. On the other, high-output models aimed at gas equivalents delivered serious power, but with more weight, higher cost, and heavier battery demand than most people actually needed. There was very little middle ground. This new string trimmer is DeWalt finally filling that gap. It's built to match the power level of the most common gas trimmers people have relied on for everyday yard work, without pushing users into pro-grade size and fatigue. That matters because most trimming jobs aren't about brute force. They're about control, consistency, and getting clean results along fence lines, sidewalks, garden edges, and general yard maintenance. In real use, the benefit shows up as balance. With a motor tuned for mid-range output and a lighter overall feel, the tool is easier to manage over longer sessions. You're not fighting the weight of the trimmer, and you're not burning through batteries faster than necessary. That means fewer stops, less arm fatigue, and a tool that feels appropriate for routine work instead of occasional heavy cleanup. This release also signals a broader shift in how DeWalt is organizing its outdoor lineup in 2026. By clearly separating high-output tools from mid-tier options like this one, buying decisions become simpler. You're no longer forced to overbuy power just to avoid disappointment. For many homeowners and light-duty users, this trimmer lands right in the sweet spot, where gas used to dominate simply because there wasn't a practical battery alternative. That said, this isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. If your property regularly involves thick weeds, woody stems, or neglected growth that borders on brush clearing, this model isn't meant to replace gas or DeWalt's higher-output stick tools. It's designed for consistent trimming, not recovery work. Buyers should also pay attention to battery compatibility and whether the specific version supports attachments, since some models prioritize simplicity over modular flexibility. The real takeaway is clarity. In 2026, this trimmer makes it easier to choose a battery tool that actually fits the job. If you want reliable trimming power without unnecessary weight, noise, fuel mixing, or maintenance, this model finally makes sense to pick up. It won't replace every gas trimmer, but for everyday yard work, it removes many of the reasons people stuck with gas longer than they needed to. Up next, the focus shifts from trimming to edging, because DeWalt didn't just adjust power levels this year, they expanded what jobs their battery lineup can realistically handle. Tool 6, DeWalt Battery Straight Shaft Edger. This next release matters for one simple reason. Edging has always been one of the most annoying gaps in battery yard tools, and DeWalt finally addressed it properly in 2026. For years, edging with battery equipment usually meant compromises. You either flipped a string trimmer sideways and hoped for a clean line, or you bought a separate, often underpowered tool that struggled to hold depth and consistency. Gas edgers solved that problem, but at the cost of noise, fumes, and maintenance for a job that's mostly about precision, not raw power. This straight shaft battery edger is DeWalt's answer to that mismatch. It's part of the same new mid-tier 28cc equivalent platform as the updated trimmer, and that pairing is intentional. Edging doesn't need extreme torque, but it does need steady power, clean control, and predictable depth. That's exactly where a mid-output battery tool makes sense. The straight shaft design is the key detail here. Compared to curved designs, a straight shaft gives you better reach, better alignment, and a more consistent cut line along sidewalks, driveways, and curbs. You're not bending awkwardly or fighting the tool to keep the blade where it needs to be. The result is cleaner edges with less effort, especially on longer runs. What really changes the buying equation is that this tool removes one of the last reasons people held on to gas equipment for basic lawn maintenance, if trimming and edging are your core tasks. You can now stay fully battery without giving up results. No fuel mixing, no seasonal storage issues, no firing up a loud engine, just to clean up the borders of your yard. This edger also benefits from the same weight and balance philosophy as the new trimmer. It's meant for regular use, not occasional punishment. That makes it easier to use consistently, which is often the difference between a yard that looks mostly fine and one that actually looks finished. There are still limits to be aware of. If you're cutting through compacted soil, overgrown turf that hasn't been edged in years, or commercial level conditions, this isn't meant to replace heavy gas edgers. It's designed for maintenance, not recovery. Buyers should also check battery compatibility so it fits cleanly into their existing setup. The bigger takeaway is that edging is no longer an afterthought in DeWalt's battery lineup. This tool completes the maintenance loop. If you already trim regularly and care about clean lines, this edger finally makes battery-only yard care feel practical instead of compromised. Next up, we'll look at the second edging option DeWalt added this year and why the design alone changes who it makes sense for. Tool 5. DeWalt Power Manager Mass Charging System. This is the kind of release that doesn't look exciting until you've actually hit the problem it's designed to solve. And once you do, it suddenly becomes one of the most valuable tools DeWalt added in 2026. Battery tools are easy to manage when you own one or two. Plug in a charger, wait a bit, and you're done. But as soon as you start running multiple tools, especially across a full workday, the weak point isn't power, it's charging. Standard wall outlets and power strips were never designed to handle several high-draw chargers pulling full load at the same time. That's when breakers trip, charging becomes unpredictable, and batteries turn into bottlenecks. Instead of assets, the Power Manager exists to fix that exact issue. Instead of letting every charger pull as much electricity as it wants all at once, this system regulates and balances the load coming from a single outlet. It spreads power safely across multiple chargers, keeping the electrical draw within a controlled range. The result is simple. You can plug everything in without worrying about overloads or constantly checking to see what stopped charging. Where this really changes the game is scale. With 6 outlets, and each outlet capable of supporting a 4-port charger, this setup allows you to charge up to 24 batteries at once from a single wall outlet. That's not a convenience feature, that's a workflow change. Crews can finish the day, plug everything in, and come back to fully charged packs without rotating chargers or playing guessing games. There is an intentional trade-off here. Because the system regulates power, batteries may charge more slowly than if each charger were running unrestricted. But that's the point. This tool is designed for overnight or off-hours charging, where safety, consistency, and predictability matter more than raw speed. It's about eliminating risk and friction, not shaving a few minutes off a single charge. If you're finding this breakdown useful so far, take a second to like the video and subscribe. It helps the channel, and it lets me keep doing these no-fluff tool breakdowns without turning them into ads. What makes this release important is that it acknowledges a reality most tool brands ignore. Battery tools don't just need motors and batteries, they need infrastructure. DeWalt is clearly designing for users who run tools all day, every day, and can't afford downtime caused by something as basic as charging logistics. This isn't a product most homeowners will ever need, and that's fine. But for contractors, landscapers, or anyone managing multiple battery-powered tools at once, this system quietly removes one of the biggest pain points of going fully cordless. It doesn't make your tools stronger, it makes your operation smoother. We shift back to cutting power, but in a much tighter, more controlled format, with a compact chainsaw that's designed for serious work in confined spaces. Tool 4. DeWalt 60V Max Hedge Trimmers. These hedge trimmers aren't about convenience upgrades. They're about removing one of the last excuses people had for sticking with gas-powered hedge tools. Battery hedge trimmers have always had a reputation problem. On smaller platforms, they work fine on soft growth. But once branches get thicker or hedges get taller, progress slows to a crawl. You end up making multiple passes, fighting vibration, and repositioning constantly just to get acceptable results. That's the experience DeWalt is clearly trying to move past with these 60 volts max models. Both versions are built around the same cutting system, and that's the foundation of the upgrade. The long blade, length combined with a higher stroke rate, is meant to keep momentum through denser growth instead of stalling out. Instead of nibbling at branches, the tool is designed to keep cutting smoothly, which saves time and keeps cuts cleaner. That matters when you're shaping hedges, not just knocking them back. Where the two models diverge is how they handle reach and angles. The fixed head trimmer is the more straightforward option. It gives you extended reach without adding complexity, which makes it easier to keep lines straight and consistent across long hedge faces. If your yard has formal hedges or evenly spaced rows, this version feels stable and predictable, which is exactly what you want when appearance matters. The articulating model changes the way you approach the job entirely. Being able to adjust the head angle lets you work from more comfortable positions, especially on taller hedges or uneven landscaping. Instead of lifting the entire tool overhead or leaning awkwardly, you set the head angle and let the tool do the work. Over a long session, that reduction in strain is the difference between finishing the job and putting it off. The real story here is power sustainability. The 60 volts max platform gives these trimmers enough output that they don't feel like battery tools pretending to be gas. You're not waiting for the blades to recover between cuts, and you're not planning your passes around power drop-offs. That's what makes them realistic options for regular use instead of occasional touch-ups. There are trade-offs, and they're worth acknowledging. Higher power means more weight, and these tools are larger than entry-level battery trimmers. If hedge trimming is something you do once or twice a year, this level of capability is probably unnecessary. But if it's a routine task and you care about speed, consistency, and reduced fatigue over time, these trimmers start to justify themselves. What makes these releases important is what they signal. DeWalt isn't just adding stronger motors, they're designing battery tools with the assumption that users expect gas-level results. That's a meaningful shift in how cordless outdoor tools are being positioned. And here's the reason to keep watching. The next tool takes that same high-power battery philosophy. Tool 3, DeWalt Battery Curve Shaft Edger. This curve shaft edger exists because not everyone edges the same way, and DeWalt finally acknowledged that in 2026. For a lot of homeowners and light-duty users, edging isn't about achieving perfectly straight, commercial-grade lines. It's about keeping sidewalks, driveways, and garden borders from looking messy without turning the job into something physical or awkward. Traditional straight shaft edgers can feel stiff if you're shorter, working on uneven ground, or constantly changing angles. That's the problem this tool is meant to solve. The curved shaft changes how the tool naturally rests and moves. Instead of forcing you into a fixed posture, it lets the cutting head follow a more natural arc along the ground. That reduces wrist strain and makes the tool feel more intuitive, especially during quick maintenance passes. For people who edge frequently but briefly, that comfort difference adds up fast. This model also benefits from sitting on DeWalt's new mid-tier battery platform. Because it's not chasing maximum output, the tool stays lighter and easier to maneuver. That matters for edging, which is more about control than force. You're guiding the blade, not driving it through compacted soil. In normal yard conditions, the power level is more than enough to maintain clean edges without bogging down. Another advantage shows up in less than perfect yards. If your property has curves, slopes, or garden beds that aren't square and flat, the curve shaft design is more forgiving. It's easier to adjust your angle on the fly without fighting the tool or feeling like you're constantly correcting your stance. That flexibility makes it more approachable for users who don't edge every week or who don't want to think too hard about technique. There are limits, and they're worth being clear about. This isn't the right choice if you care about long, ruler-straight edges or if you're maintaining commercial properties. The curve shaft sacrifices some reach and alignment precision compared to a straight shaft. In tough soil or neglected areas, it's also not meant to replace a heavy gas edger. This tool is about maintenance, not recovery. What really matters is that DeWalt didn't treat this as an afterthought. By offering both straight shaft and curve shaft edgers in the same power tier, they're letting buyers choose based on how they actually work, not just on specs. That's a shift toward usability instead of one-size-fits-all design. If edging is something you do often but casually, and you value comfort and ease over maximum precision, this curve shaft edger makes battery yard care feel less like a chore and more like a quick cleanup, and that's exactly what it's supposed to be. We move away from cutting altogether and into a tool that solves a completely different problem: battery management and downtime. Tool 2. DeWalt 60V Max 12-inch top handle compact chainsaw. This is one of those tools that looks deceptively small until you understand the problem it's meant to solve. DeWalt didn't design this chainsaw to compete with full-size saws or replace what people already use for firewood and large cuts. It exists because bigger chainsaws often create their own limitations when the job demands precision, balance, and control instead of reach. Top-handle chainsaws are built for situations where space is tight and mistakes are costly. Pruning, limbing, working within tree canopies, or making controlled cuts near structures all require a tool that responds instantly and predictably. Gas models have dominated this category for years because battery saws simply didn't have enough sustained power to feel trustworthy once the chain hit real wood. That's the gap this release is trying to close. By putting this saw on the 60 volts max platform, DeWalt is clearly prioritizing cutting consistency over raw size. The 12-inch bar keeps the tool compact and manageable, but the real story is what happens under load. This saw is designed to maintain chain speed instead of bogging down the moment resistance increases. That's the difference between a tool that feels capable and one that feels underpowered the second it matters. Balance is where this design really shows its value. The top handle layout pulls the center of gravity closer to the user's hand, which makes the saw easier to guide through precise cuts. You're not fighting the nose of a long bar or compensating for awkward leverage. In controlled environments, that balance translates into smoother cuts, better accuracy, and less fatigue over time. This tool also signals a more professional intent than most compact chainsaws. Features like built-in safety systems, controlled chain braking, tool-free adjustments, and onboard indicators aren't there to look impressive on a spec sheet. They're there because this saw is meant to be used repeatedly in conditions where confidence and predictability matter more than speed alone. It's important to be clear about what this saw is not. It's not meant for bucking large logs, cutting firewood all afternoon, or replacing a traditional rear-handle chainsaw for groundwork. Buying it for those tasks would be a mismatch. This is a specialized tool, and its value shows up only when it's used for the type of work it was designed for. What makes this release significant is the signal it sends. DeWalt isn't just increasing battery power for the sake of numbers. They're pushing cordless tools into professional niches that were once considered off-limits without gas. That shift matters because it changes where battery tools are no longer just convenient, but genuinely viable, and that leads directly into the final tool on this list, the one that represents the biggest change DeWalt made in 2026, not in size or specialization, but in outright capability and category expansion. Tool 1, DeWalt Battery Backpack Blower. This is the release that reshapes how people should think about DeWalt's outdoor tools in 2026, because it isn't just an upgrade to an existing product. It's DeWalt fully stepping into a category they were never truly competitive in before. For years, battery blowers were fine for light cleanup, but failed the moment scale entered the picture. Clearing a garage, a short driveway, or a small patio was manageable. But once leaves were wet, piled deep, or spread across a large area, handheld battery blowers hit their limits fast. Fatigue set in, runtime dropped, and performance became inconsistent. That's why backpack blowers stayed gas-powered for so long, not because users wanted gas, but because battery options couldn't realistically replace it. This backpack blower is DeWalt directly addressing that gap. By moving the weight onto your back, the tool immediately changes how long you can work without strain. Instead of gripping a heavy motor in front of you, your arms are free to guide airflow while your body carries the load more efficiently. That single design shift matters more than most spec numbers, especially for long cleanup sessions. Performance is where this tool makes its strongest case. With manufacturer-stated airflow in the high output range and selectable operating modes, this blower is designed to handle real leaf volume, not just surface debris. Lower settings make sense for lighter cleanup and longer runtime, while higher modes exist for dense piles, wet leaves, and seasonal cleanup when conditions aren't ideal. The ability to scale power instead of running at full output all the time is what makes this tool practical instead of exhausting. What makes this release especially important is what it replaces in real-world tool collections. For many users, the backpack blower was the last gas-powered holdout. Everything else had gone cordless, but blowing large areas still required fuel, noise, fumes, and maintenance. This model directly challenges that reality. It won't eliminate gas in every extreme scenario, but it removes gas from a large percentage of everyday and professional cleanup work where battery tools were previously a compromise. There are limits, and they're worth being honest about. This is not a casual tool. It's larger, heavier, and more expensive than a handheld blower, and it doesn't make sense for small or occasional jobs. If you only clear a few leaves once a week, this is unnecessary. But for large properties, long driveways, commercial spaces, or anyone who spends serious time moving debris, the efficiency gain shows up immediately. The bigger takeaway is confidence. DeWalt isn't experimenting here, there isn't committing. Entering the backpack blower category means they believe their battery platform can sustain power, runtime, and durability at a level that actually competes. That's a meaningful shift, not just a product launch. If you've been waiting for a battery blower that finally makes sense for large-scale cleanup without feeling like a downgrade, this is the tool that justifies the switch. That's why it stands at the top of this list, and why it signals a real change in what cordless outdoor tools can realistically replace in 2026. That's the full picture of what DeWalt actually brought to the table in 2026. Not hype, not speculation, just tools that fill real gaps and change a few buying decisions along the way. Some of these make sense only for specific users, and some genuinely shift what battery tools can replace going forward. The key takeaway is clarity. You now know which releases matter for your kind of work and which ones you can safely ignore. If this breakdown helped you make sense of what's new, hit like and subscribe. It lets me keep doing clear, no-fluff tool breakdowns like this, focused on what's worth buying and why.